Hey, Dr. Darko, where do you go to get your life and disability insurance?
I went to Set for Life Insurance. They helped me save over 30% compared to my previous policy.
Wow, I'm paying an arm and a leg for my life and disability insurance. What's that company called again?
Set for Life Insurance. Check them out at setforlifeinsurance.com and tell them Dr. Darko sent you.
Welcome to Docs Outside the Box podcast. This is your official show, looking inside the minds of cutting-edge and innovative doctors. Think you'll find these stories in any medical textbook? Sorry. You're getting real life insight from men and women pushing the envelope beyond medicine. Ordinary doctors doing extraordinary things. Let's start now with your host, Dr. Nee Darko.
Hey docs, are you looking to learn how to become a physician leader? Then Physician CEO is for you. Physician CEO is an accelerated business immersion program designed for physicians and developed by MBA faculty from the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. So learn more at www.physician-ceo.com/DOTB. Everybody knows it's difficult becoming a doctor, whether you're a layman. Obviously, if you're in the medical field, we deal with life and death situations. We deal with family situations. It's crazy. It's been well documented, and we've all been through it. But have you ever thought about what life is like in Hollywood? We all know it's not life or death, right? That's easy to say, but it's pretty stressful, and some would even say cutthroat. After listening to my next guest, you're going to learn about the resiliency that's needed to survive the glam, the glitz, the fame, and also the rejection in Hollywood. What's good, everybody? My name is Dr. Nee Darko. I'm your host, and I'm the Doc Outside the Box. Thanks for joining me on another episode of Docs Outside the Box. My next guest is Dr. Zoanne Clack, and she is the executive producer of the famous, long-running ABC show Grey's Anatomy. That's right. So look, I flew out to go interview her on studio, and she gave me a tour of the studio. Pictures are in the show notes, and it was amazing. She's been writing on this show for the past 14 years now, and although she's enjoying the fruits of her labor, her name is literally on the beginning credits of the show. There's a lot more to her that you're going to learn in this episode. So I'm going to keep this intro really short because there's a lot that we cover. Things that you're going to learn in this episode. So you're going to hear about how she hit her lowest point while being a resident and how that drove her to go after her dreams. We're also going to talk about how she dealt with multiple failures. I'm talking canceled shows, not getting callbacks. At one point, she was offered two jobs, one to write on House MD and the other to write on Grey's Anatomy. We're going to get a chance to hear about how she decided to choose one over the other. And then one thing that I think you all will really like is she's going to describe what it's like to work with Shonda Rhimes. And as you all know, everything that Shonda touches turns gold. So it's pretty cool to hear what it's like to work with someone of her stature. She offers some quick tips on how to make it in Hollywood. And of course, as with all of my guests, she's going to answer #I'm not just a doc. So without further ado, let's get on with this interview. Dr. Zoanne Clack, welcome to Docs Outside the Box. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for thinking of me.
Oh, come on now. There's a lot that we are going to learn from you. Obviously, we are recording this in Los Angeles. I'm going to let you describe what you are. The thing that I'm really excited about is your transition from being a practicing physician to where you are now. So before we get so much into the nitty-gritty, can you please let us know what you do currently right now?
I am currently one of the executive producers on Grey's Anatomy, and I serve also as a medical consultant on the show.
Grey's Anatomy, I heard of that. Tell me, what show is that on? What
it's,
TV channel?
ABC television.
I'm just teasing.
Thursdays.
I'm just teasing.
8 o'clock.
The great Grey's Anatomy, and it's been on for roughly about 14 seasons now.
14 seasons.
And you've been involved in all of the seasons.
Been involved in all of the seasons, all of the 14 seasons, over a decade of work. So,
wow.
I started when I was 14.
Wow.
very early bloomer.
Now let's take a step back and go back to your life as a physician, as Dr. Clack. Now you were an emergency room physician down at Emory University at Grady Memorial Hospital. I also did my residency at Morehouse, so I spent a lot of time at Grady.
The Grady's.
The Grady's. Talk about that. Tell us about who you were back then, and then we can kind of talk about your transition into where you are now.
Well, at Grady, I was, as you said, an emergency medicine resident. And even in my second year, I felt like I was already burning out. So I felt like I needed to have a backup plan.
That's really early.
Just in case. Well, considering it's only a 3-year residency.
Do you remember what exactly was getting you? Was it the hours? Was it, the stress?
Well, if I could take you back a bit, it really started much earlier than even that.
Okay.
Because I feel like as I was growing up, it was always told to me that I would be a doctor. In other words, you make good grades, and people say, "Whoa, you should be a doctor or a lawyer." And I was like, "Oh, I really don't want to be a lawyer, so I guess I'll be a doctor." Gotcha. And I enjoyed it. I liked all the gruesome stuff and all the cool science and all that kind of stuff. But it never really was not presented to me as the way to go. Like, I just didn't have another option that I knew of. But so I grew up with that in mind. And then my senior year, I realized how long it would take. And I said, "Oh, God, I'll be 26 when I finish," which just sounded like the oldest person on the world in the universe, to an 17-year-old. So I actually went to Northwestern with the thoughts of getting into the radio, TV, film program because I kind of grew up on TV. I was an only child growing up, and I thought maybe that would be something fun. So I spent the year trying to get into the radio, TV, film program at Northwestern, not realizing how kind of exclusive it was. And I got into the program, and I was really excited, and I had done a lot of extracurricular activities to get in there. And when I got home that summer, my mom, who is a single mom to an only child, kind of looked at me. Also, she's a teacher, the first in her family to go to college and get a master's degree and that sort of thing. She kind of looked at me and said, "That's great." And me, being an only child who felt like not the weight of the world was on me, but that I owed a particular thing, and I was very much I should do the right thing kind of person, felt that it was my duty to now go back and fulfill all of my pre-med requirements. So since it took me so long to get into the School of Speech and that sort of thing, I kept my communication studies degree, or I kept a degree in that, and did like a neurobiology minor, like you do.
So you just suppressed your passions in essence.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know it was my passion.
We're getting like Dr. Phil on this right now.
I didn't know it was my passion at the time. But I knew it was something that I really enjoyed, and people seem to have fun on TV. I'm from Houston, so you see this box, and you see like the outtakes, and everybody's laughing, and you don't see that in the doctor world.
No,
although we do have a lot of fun in between, the bad stuff.
Which there's a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah,
and good stuff.
There's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of camaraderie, a lot of family, that sort of thing. But so I just basically went the next 10 years, and I did medicine. And I went to med school at UT Southwestern in Dallas, and then I went to Emory, and by that second year, it all started catching up to me, and I was like, what else is there? The itch came back. And I still wasn't even on the what else is there. I just wanted to go in the path of medicine, but what kind of options do I have? Which I think was one thing that drew me to emergency medicine, was because I have options, which I didn't even know that I needed at the time, but it gives you a lot of options. And I think a lot of people that go into emergency medicine are people who have other interests. Right. And, I know a lot of bikers. I know a lot of people who love to travel. A lot of people will, pull their shifts where they're doing 4 weeks and then they have 4 weeks off so they can just do other things. And that wasn't my original intention with emergency medicine, but it worked out really well for me. Considering the path that I went. But so second year, I realized that I might need some kind of backup. So I went on to do a fellowship at Emory in injury prevention, which in which I got my master's in public health from the Rollins School of Public Health at Emory. And after that, I got to do a lot of work with the CDC, international work, which I really loved to travel, and I really loved to put that emergency medicine with the traveling. So we did some international emergency medicine stuff. I helped respond to the bombings in Tanzania, the embassy bombings in Tanzania and Kenya back in the day. And
that was a big deal, though.
It was a big deal, and it was exciting to go to Dar es Salaam and see another culture at work, and how we could help influence, kind of our American way of doing emergency medicine, which is a fairly new specialty even for America, but out in the world, it doesn't exist. So we were trying to make ways for them to be kind of more efficient in the way that they do their emergency and trauma care, so that not that the bombings wouldn't happen, but they could respond.
Right. When did you start to say, okay, something needs to happen? Like, this is just not for me. Like, obviously you finished residency. What was the next step after residency?
I finished residency. I was an attending at Emory.
At Grady, or at Emory. Okay.
Yes, mostly at Emory Hospital, but also at Grady, which is trying in and of itself, because you're suddenly, especially if in a 3-year program, when you have people like yourself who are surgeons doing 5-year programs, and now you're suddenly their boss. That was always really interesting.
Right. That was an interesting transition.
Yes. But I enjoyed it. It just became, I'll tell you, well, if you want to get all Dr. Phil here.
Yeah, let's do it. Come on. This is Docs Outside the Box. We keep it 100.
This is 100.
This is 100.
Right here is 100.
There you go.
100. One day when I was driving to work one evening, I was just bawling for no reason except that I was going to work. And I just felt like
I think a lot of people can just relate to what you just said right there.
Yeah, it was
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
I was writing this thing called One Day I Cried, which is, if you knew me, you'd be like, okay, that's really weird. Because it's just not a thing that I do. It's not practical. It's not reasonable. It doesn't solve anything, but it does. It kind of kickstarts things. So it became kind of a mission, as it were, to find the next thing after the next thing I had already tried. So I literally applied for research fellowships to do, like, they were looking for doctors who didn't have PhD, like MDs, to do bench research. So I looked at that for like a split second and was like, no. I looked at perhaps doing another residency or another fellowship.
Wow, so this is like desperation now.
And another residency, that was like really way back. I did not want to do another residency, although I now understood why people did derm and radiology.
Right.
For some reason, lifestyle at one point was not at all something that I cared about. And in fact, in 3rd year of medical school, I remember telling a 4th year student who was saying, well, what are you thinking about? And I was like, surgery, because, lifestyle doesn't matter.
Oh.
And then suddenly it became everything.
Right.
And I didn't have kids or anything. It's just, I wanted a good lifestyle, and emergency medicine could give you that. But so I looked at doing maybe a sports medicine fellowship, or just something that I could do different. And then I started taking, like, I think I had done some interviews in LA and that sort of thing. And LA just gives you the bug. Like, it just sparks you. Everybody's a starving actor, or
it's
got a script in their trunk, or there's just
Right.
this feeling that you get here. And I started taking an acting class, because let's remember, I'm from Houston, so all I saw was a box, not a doc in a box, but a box of actors, and I didn't realize all the things that were happening on the back end of that. So I took an acting class while I was still at Emory, and thought it was so much fun, and decided that maybe I could just move to LA and see what happened. And that was really based on a lot of different things. I was dating a guy in LA who didn't want me to move. So, but I was like, if you lived anywhere else, I wouldn't even think about it. But it's LA and there's some things I would like to do, so maybe I could consider it. And he broke up with me, and that was cool.
Uh-oh.
So I still pursued. And then I had a lot of friends, like 2 or 3 friends who were here who were kind of helping me look for jobs, because I was like, I have a good day job. I could do my job and see what happens, and if nothing happens, big deal.
Right.
I have a very secure job because I'm all about backups, as you could tell from my journey. So as I was looking for jobs and looking for apartments, I had a friend who was working for the RAND Foundation, and she was looking in the back of an emergency medicine, the journal. I don't know why I wasn't looking in that, but she saw there's a position for the show ER for an onset person. And
Like an onset medical person.
Like onset medical person,
Okay.
to teach the actors what to do and how to look like a doctor, and tell them what things meant and all that kind of
Now,
stuff.
just real quick, we have some millennials who are probably listening to the show who probably don't know what ER is, possibly. So ER was the medical show on NBC that came on, I believe, was it Wednesdays? Or
I don't know what day it came on.
I can't remember what day, but it was famous. It ran for
big
a
deal.
long, it was.
We're actually trying to beat their record right now, because
Okay.
they went for 15 seasons, and we're very, very close.
Okay, gotcha.
But anyone who doesn't know ER, it's like Friends and Seinfeld.
Right,
right.
right.
It was that era of NBC.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
They were looking for an onset person, and for some reason they advertised at the back of this medical journal, which at this point in my job I would never do, because I know plenty of people who would like to do what I do, and I just reach out to them if I had some kind of spot. But so she was like, "Hey, this sounds like something you would like to do." And I said, "Hey, that sounds like something I would like to do." So I wrote off a letter to them and heard nothing. And then randomly, I was talking to one of my mentors at Emory and just saying, "Yeah, there's this thing on ER." And he was like, "Hey, mention my name. I trained with the guy who's hiring."
Really?
Yes. And mind you, I never mentioned that I wanted to do La La Hollywood stuff while I was saving lives. I think that was the question. I never mentioned that in my usual doctor life, but for some reason I was just hanging out with my mentor and mentioned it. I probably was like blowing it off, but he totally was like, "Yeah, I mean, they were such friends that the guy who was hiring had actually put his name in a script in the past. So they were good friends." So I shot off a letter to him with his name in it, got an interview, flew up to LA, and I got a tour of the ER set. And I just toured the Grey's Anatomy set with Nee, and it was kind of, you kind of felt.
That was an amazing tour. By
Yeah,
the way.
you feel kind of giddy.
Right, right.
That's how I felt on the ER set. Like,
Right.
I was like, "Oh my God, everything I've been watching is right here." And I was literally the giddiest I'd ever been about any kind of interview in my life. So it was really exciting. And I flew home and I was so excited, and I didn't get the job. And they
Oh,
were
you
like,
didn't get the job?
"Oh, no."
I thought this was going to end like this is
Oh,
it.
you thought so. But no.
Okay.
What happened was they said, "We'll keep you in mind." And I was like, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Hollywood talk. So I stayed here in LA, and I took a bunch of what I thought I wanted to do, acting classes. I took a bunch of those classes, and apparently actors don't just put drops in their eyes to cry. They have to dredge up like the worst experiences of their lives to like emote. And so
You got to act.
I was learning to do that.
Right.
And whereas medicine tells you to keep it all in and suck it up and, let the families do that,
Right.
acting tells you to dredge it all up,
Right.
pull
So
it out.
no emotions versus,
Yeah.
be yourself and just let it happen. Like,
So
Yeah.
that one day when I cried became just like a continuum of just pulling up things that had happened, throughout my life. And I didn't have anywhere to put it. So I started writing. And then I realized I always wanted to be a writer. Like when I was 12, I had wanted to be the youngest author. And then someone who was like 11 published something. So I just gave it up. But I kind of found this writing thing and took a writing class at UCLA Extension. And it was, I thought maybe I wanted to do sitcoms, so I wrote a Sex and the City. And the Keep You in Mind thing came back because one of the executive producers of ER was now doing this other medical show.
Now, which show is this for?
It's called Presidio Med.
Presidio Med, okay.
It was on CBS.
Yes, I remember that.
And I'm sure a lot of people remember that. It was on for 8 months. She interviewed me, not knowing what she would need. She didn't know what position she would need, or she just they said I was a good person, so she just gave me a chance. So basically, I went to the interview, which we call a meeting in Hollywood. And I said, look, I'll do anything. I will be a consultant over the phone, or I will be on set, but I'd really love to write. And literally the first script I'd ever written in that class, I shoved in her face, which knowing what I know now, would probably never do.
Right.
But, you take these chances.
Exactly.
And she hired me as a staff writer 2 months later.
For Presidio Med.
For Presidio Med.
Oh, wow.
And so I had to quickly
Mama, I done made it.
Well, you can stay in staff writer level for a long time. Like if your shows keep getting canceled, they usually like you to finish out an entire year as a staff writer before moving on to next levels. But so I was a staff writer, which is the first entry level to writing for TV. So I had to quickly do a drama script because I had only done a comedy script. And we got canceled about the same time that we have what we call a staffing season. So for network TV, there's a time where all the pilots are being made and they're deciding who's going to go to series and that sort of thing. And that's when they're hiring people. And that's about the same time we got canceled. So I didn't have a lot of things to go out with. So
Gotcha.
I continued my emergency medicine. All through this, I'm doing emergency medicine shifts and taking classes. And
Do your colleagues know that you're doing this also?
Oh, yeah.
Like you have this other lifestyle?
My LA colleagues fully knew.
Mm-hmm. Were they supportive? Were they critical? Like, what did they say?
No, they were very supportive, the LA people. I mean, because I kind of had to let them know because I was planning my shifts kind of around that. And I think LA people are so used to, I did have this one colleague who, after I got on Grey's Anatomy, actually, was saying stuff like, I can't wait for that show to be canceled so you can come back full time.
Ooh. Dang.
He was not a nice person.
Just straight hate.
Yeah, it wasn't cute.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Understanding how to run a business in medicine will put you at a unique advantage in the future. Whether it's leading a hospital, practice, or starting a new venture, the Physician CEO program will put you in focus from day one. Physician CEO is an accelerated business immersion program developed by MBA faculty from the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. The Physician CEO program provides an intensive MBA-style education made up of modules, with each module covering topics from leadership to entrepreneurial ventures. Because of their individualized structure, each participant leaves the program with their 1, 3, and even 5-year business plan, all designed to function in the real world. If you're a physician who is looking to start your own venture, lead your practice or department, or even start planning for succession out of medicine, then you can't afford to miss this opportunity. Class is filling up. Learn more at www.physician-ceo.com/DOTB. So Presidio Med turned out to be a really good opportunity, but unfortunately, sounds like the show got canceled. So then you're off to kind of doing back to being an ER physician.
Yes.
How did you get involved? How did you find out about this show called Grey's Anatomy? Like, how did that whole process come about?
So I wrote a bunch of scripts. I wrote a play. I wrote a couple other what we call spec scripts when you write a script that's of a show, an existing show. And the next year, I went on a lot of meetings and got offered jobs on Grey's Anatomy and House.
Like House, the one on Fox?
House, the one on Fox.
Okay.
And I went through a lot about choosing which one to do. And ultimately, there were a couple of different things. Like for the House job, I would have to remain a staff writer for another year. Like I said, you usually have to finish an entire year. But they were going to pay me for a script, which you don't usually get as a staff writer. But for Grey's Anatomy, they were going to put me up to the next level, which is like, sadly, twice the money. and you get paid for scripts.
Okay.
So that was obviously
Better pay.
an interesting factor.
More of an opportunity.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And I was like, I could write about shows of residency all day. I was a resident. Whereas on House, I was like, would I be the one that would always have to be, why doesn't this work? Why can't they find it?
Do you have like a gut feeling when you looked at these things and said, okay, well, House was a hit, but Grey's Anatomy, like that's on a different level, right? Like, did you know from the get-go which one?
Absolutely not.
Really?
Well,
Okay.
I had a lot of factors to weigh. It was really kind of a hard, you don't know which one was gonna
Sure.
pop, and they both popped in retrospect. But so I picked the ABC one, and immediately they put House on after American Idol, and it became like this huge hit. And meanwhile, they made Grey's Anatomy a mid-season show, and ABC had both Lost and Desperate Housewives that year, so they were doing great. They didn't need another show. They actually shut down Grey's Anatomy at one point, and it's like, you guys need to retool it. The president of ABC at the time didn't have a lot of faith in the show, and we had like a date we were supposed to air, which just kept getting pushed, and we didn't have an air date for a long time. Meanwhile, House was blowing everything out of the water, and I was like, I chose wrong.
I was about to ask, did you have second thoughts?
Oh my God. I was having my agents call them and say, do they still like me? But then we finally premiered, I think in March of 2005, and we were supposed to do 4 shows instead of a legal show, one of the legal shows that was really Boston Legal. We were supposed to do 4 shows in their spot, which was after Desperate Housewives. So they're like, you know what? We're going to give them the best possible chance, and if they can't pull it through, then they're gone. So the first week, all the writers we had finished writing already, and we all got together to watch the premiere of the show, and it did really, really well. And anybody's going to take a look at the first show, and it's right after like one of their biggest shows. So we still were like, okay, well, we'll see what happens. And the television was still, okay, 3 weeks, Boston Legal comes back. And then the next week, we did better than even the first week, because more eyes were looking, and they were still saying, okay, Boston Legal returning in 2 weeks. And then the third week, I think we might have gotten bigger numbers than Boston Legal had, because there was no more mention of Boston Legal coming back. And we had actually planned a party. Shonda had planned a party for the fourth week, because that was supposedly our last week.
Shonda Rhimes.
Shonda Rhimes.
Mm-hmm.
So before she was the Shonda Rhimes we all know and love now. But she had planned a party at her house to say either goodbye to everyone or welcome back, because we didn't know.
Right.
So literally by the fourth time, there was already like fan fiction. Have you heard of fan fiction?
No.
It's when fans put people together in like romantic situations and like make their own stories and have a whole thing on the internet. Like, we literally already had those people. Like, people were such fans of the show right off the bat that there was no denying that we'd be back, and it was everybody's happy party.
So when did you know, like, okay, this is like, wow, like this show is going to pop off, like this is it? Like, when did that hit you?
I mean, we just always believed in Shonda's vision. She's made for television. Like, just the way that she can write really quickly, and her dialogue was so, poppy, and her characters were so new and kind of fresh, and the diversity of the show. We didn't know. You never know if something's going to be a hit, if something's going to pop with other people. But here in the writer's room, we enjoyed it.
Okay, so let me ask you a question then. I probably should have asked you this on Presidio Med, but what was it like when you saw, your name on the credits? Like, what was that like? Were you like trying to get everybody to like, hey, watch this, mama, you got to see this,
No, I was still in the, you never know what's going to happen. Plus, I didn't want people to talk about me. If they saw me, then that's great. But because when you first start, your name is at the end of the show. And then as you progress, your name starts to be at the front. So I never put it out there to watch for my name.
But that's when it was at the end of the show. But now your show, when the show comes on, like as you know the characters are moving on, your name is at the bottom.
It is true.
Like that's got to be like
it's nice. I mean, it's been a while now.
Yeah, so you're used to this now.
The newness has kind of worn out, but it's still fun when people do like the screen grabs or I did get a mention on The View by Jesse Williams the other day.
Oh,
that
really?
was very
Okay.
exciting. So the little things are still exciting.
Now, what's it like? What's the biggest difference you would say between practicing medicine and actually, writing about medicine, but in a more dramatic way? Because I mean, we both can agree, like medicine, the way how we practice, it's boring, right? But like,
it could be kind of cookbook sometimes,
right? But how do you make it so that like millions of people who don't know anything about specific medicine, they end up loving the show and being enthralled by it? Like, what do you do? What's the magic touch that you put into it?
The thing that is most exciting about being the medical person on a medical show is that we get to speak to experts from all over the world about like the most kind of life-changing, brilliant inventions and ideas. We speak to innovators. Like this whole season, we did a contest with the attendings, and we learned like all of this kind of new stuff that was coming out, and we got to talk to the people who invented it, and we just get to know like the 1 in a million cases and the people who did them. We get to actually talk to them and talk through it and what happened in the surgery and who are these patients. Sometimes we get to talk to the patients. So, and it's also very exciting to not have our patients actually die. That is the best part, I think, because we kill a patient on the page and then we see it on the stage and they are walking around with their huge injuries, which is very exciting.
Well, look, what we do though, it's really cutthroat, right? Well, it's not cutthroat, but people can die.
Yeah.
But do you look at it the same way in terms of stress? Because it's got to be a really stressful job. Like if you don't do your job in terms of writing, or if you have if you're not very consistent with your episodes or your writing, and ratings and the money that's put into these shows,
it's a completely different kind of stress.
Okay.
I mean, it's definitely stressful. You definitely have deadlines. You're definitely trying to please a lot of people, and you can also disappoint a lot of people. But the disappointment here is vastly different than disappointing a family whose loved one has just passed. It's all a matter of perspective. Because when I get really stressed out here about something that's going on, I'm like, people. We're not killing anyone. This is beautiful. We get to make magic every day. So you just put it back into perspective, I think.
So those days of bawling coming to work are over. That's long gone in the past, right?
Of what?
The days
bawling.
Bawling. Those days are
It's a different kind of bawling now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's family stress bawling now.
Because I mean, just looking at your face, you just look so rewarded. Like you feel like this is like a rewarding career and stuff. It's amazing. It's truly like when you were giving us the tour of the set. Like you just look so like like this is you and stuff. And
that's good.
I mean, it's amazing to see that. Do you think that you will ever go back to practicing medicine?
It is a possibility.
And you could be honest. Keep it 100.
Okay, I'm going to keep it real. It's a possibility just for a slower life because I now have 3 children and I'm a single mom. Okay. And living in LA is stressful as a mother to watch your children grow up in this kind of like what some would call frivolous ideation of what life should be and what kind of job. Like, most people, I think, in the world would be like, whoa, that's really hard to get into. It's not something that you just take for granted. But people in LA are just like, yeah, I'm going to be an actor, whatever. It's just kind of a wonder world, kind of a crazy world. In and of just like them growing up in a slower paced place with people who have average American values, it would be kind of a pipe dream to move to a Montana or something.
Now, how do you equate that with? I mean, the show continues to be successful every year, continues to do well in the ratings. Like, so in essence, you're here until.
Oh, there's a drive. The drive is still
Right.
there, which is what prevents me from just stopping and doing that. Because you do want to do the next thing and make it the next show and have the next be the next big influencer in the world. I mean, there's just so much you can do with entertainment and meeting people halfway and changing attitudes and changing knowledge. Like, the whole entertainment education path that I've been able to go down has been amazing. And I think I was telling you before, it's just like all of my paths merged to give me validation of what I do every day. Instead of, saving a life every day, I reach millions of people around the world every day.
I see. So then let me use that as a segue then. Oftentimes, life imitates art, or I guess, I don't know if it goes vice versa or so, but
Yes, it does.
right? Like, with what's going on now in today's world, right? We have political strife. We have, hashtag Me Too moments. We have, you did a recent episode that was very powerful with Black Lives Matter and a police officer shooting a black child and so forth. How do you integrate stuff that's going on in the real world onto the show? How do you know what's too much? How do you know maybe we need to attack this more? Like, take us through that. Like, how do you write that? How do you take that concept from what's going on in the real world and try to get that into the show? Or do you, in essence, just say, you know what, we just create our own world and, go from there?
Well, Grey's Anatomy tends not to be a drawn from the headlines kind of thing like Law and Order was.
Yeah,
or
Law and Order is like
they're
everything.
very much like, I got it, the headline, and it's on your TV next week.
Right.
But if it serves our story, if it serves our characters, then we will bring it in. Because, like you mentioned, the Black Lives Matter episode, the point of that episode was not Black Lives Matter. The point of that episode was April was losing her faith. So we wanted to take April through a crisis of faith. And we were like, what would take her through? And it's basically, we came up with, it's just the unfairness of the world and how things can happen and there's no rhyme or reason to it and it's just not fair. And so we had her accidentally killing her jilted fiance's wife. I mean, yes. And the Black Lives Matter, where a kid going into his own house was shot and killed. And then we also had the domestic violence thing, which was something that we had built up for like the last 3 years for the character Joe. But it was, and the other patient that she had was a guy who tried to cut off his hand, because he was taking the Bible literally. So she had to think about what the Bible means and how it played off in her life and what was going on. So it all stems out of character and story. And then if we can bring an issue in, like, we're very, very careful because we understand how important what we put out there is. We have a certain responsibility to how we tell stories so that we're not, like, we've had a hard time tackling the issue of suicide because we don't want people to, be copycats. We don't want them to get any kind of how-to booklet from us. And we haven't really been able to tackle it in the way that we think is responsible and safe, so we haven't. So there's just very much, if we're going to tackle any issue, we're very careful as to how we portray it, or we try to be very careful.
Now, in terms of having like this literally 14-year stretch of success after success after success, you got this look on your face. Were there any potholes, any hurdles that you had to go through? Just anything that comes to the top of your head?
The thing that comes to the top of my head is in the first 3 years, I think, my first starting here at Grey's Anatomy, what was interesting to me is that my knowledge of medicine limited my storytelling ability when I first got here, because you know what's right. You know what the real limitations are in the world, whereas these writers who have no knowledge of medicine have no idea. So they would just like splurt out ideas, and I'd be like, no, that would never happen in the world. No, it only happens like this. And then you like get on the phone with experts, or they would say, well, could we try? And I'd get on the phone with experts and I'd talk them through the cases. And as I was telling you before, like you get on the phone with experts and of course their first thought is no also.
Yeah.
So then you say, but what if this and what if that? And then they start kind of thinking about it and they're like, well, you could do this, or they'll say, well, this could happen, but that'd be extremely rare. And then we just jump on it because we're like, rare is what we need. And then once they kind of get into that flow, they start just telling us like how it could possibly happen and how we could make this happen. And if you wanted to do this, you could do this. And then it becomes like this kind of flow of creativity between the two. And then you realize you have to open your mind and see what's happening. So it was the merging of the left and right brain that was a very much a learning curve. Coming
you know, there are going to be some people who are going to be listening to this show like, I want her job. I want to do exactly what she is doing. I want to grow up to be just like Dr. Zoanne Clack. Do you have any quick tips that they can use to, you know, kind of may not be in Hollywood, but just kind of start the writing process, or eventually maybe you make it to Hollywood, you know, in the future? What could they do?
Well, you definitely take the classes, do the work. They always say that luck is, you know, opportunity meets preparation. And I feel like I was crazy lucky because I had that script at that time and the opportunity presented itself. So the way I made the opportunity happen was to move to the place where things happen.
Right.
So if you want to do TV, I just think it's imperative that you move somewhere where it's happening. If you Atlanta, it's happening. New York
It's
has a
my
little
favorite town,
bit.
Dr. Clack.
Atlanta has some good things, but there's some people that are mostly. There's a lot of shooting in Atlanta, though. There's not a lot of story breaking in Atlanta, but there is some. But you know, LA is pretty much the place to be for the most opportunities for television. Film, you can pretty much do anywhere. You just have to get to know the people that can make the shows. Or, obviously, there's the internet where you can just make your own thing and be discovered. It happens. It could happen. But I would just say be prepared and make the opportunities happen.
What's it like working with Shonda Rhimes?
She is probably the most creative that I've ever worked with, but I've been under her tutelage for 14 years. It's been really interesting to just kind of watch her grow, and we have some new staff, like people who are just out of college, like the PAs and the assistants and things, and they have literally taken classes on Shonda Rhimes in their film programs.
Right.
And I literally, when I went to my first meeting with her, was like, I wonder if Shonda is Black. I was like, her name kind of sounds like it could be. Then I looked at her. She had written Dorothy Dandridge and the Crossroads, which was the Britney Spears movie. So I was like, I have no idea.
Right.
And then when I got there and I met her and you know, this all happened, but no one would ever wonder what was happening there now. So it's been a really interesting transition to see, and I'm hoping to follow suit.
Well, I think you're definitely on your way. So,
Well, thanks.
just remember, you know, Need Darko. You know, if you ever need a character.
What was it?
Need Darko.
Need
Darko.
hand?
Need Darko.
Hand light.
No,
Okay, gotcha.
Darko. Not elbow. Darko.
not okay.
Looks
gotcha.
like Denzel Washington.
Oh
kinda-
yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Heard
Okay,
of
let's
him.
move on. So look, we're getting towards the end of the interview. Let's do some fast fire questions. You game?
All right.
I'm going to ask you some questions. You just tell me whatever comes off the top of the dome
So
piece. Okay.
exciting.
All right. Look, what's one thing you want people to get from this podcast?
I think speaking up, even though you feel like people are gonna talk about you or look down on what you're doing, speak up. Because if I had never randomly talked to my mentor, none of this would have happened.
Right. Absolutely. It's a good question. Good answer. Excuse me.
Hey, thanks.
Now, let's say you got a chance to go back and talk to student doctor Zoanne Clack, or even pre-med Zoanne Clack. Knowing what you know now, what kind of advice would you have given your previous self?
Well, I actually kind of took the advice by accident that I would give to pre-meds, which is to major in whatever you want to and take your sciences as part of it. But if you want to be a doctor, you're going to be in science for the rest of your life. sometimes, unless you're me. But even me, like there's a lot of science that I use like every day on the show. So do what you want to do, travel, get flavor, get international, get culture, learn things about other people, unless science is your bag. Like if science is what you love, then totally do it. But if science is the way to get to med school, then just explore. Just use that time to explore.
Okay. Now, Zoanne, like, look, you've done some great things in your life. And, you know, it just keeps going. But there's got to be some things that you're proud of that nobody else knows. So I'm asking you, like, what's something that you're extremely proud of that the public doesn't know about?
Well, some of the public knows, but being a single mom of 3 kids, I did it.
Love it.
I mean, my oldest is adopted, and my youngest are from donors. So it was literally not just like a Black woman statistic being single. Like it was literally something I took on. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I'm sort of making it work, even though I've done a lot of texting during this interview.
Yo, you are multitasking like crazy. You guys don't know, like she has been using the cell phone and answering these questions and writing a script all at the same time.
Yes. Also my computer.
I'm sorry. That's amazing. 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 So thank you very much for sharing that. I'm sure that's very personal, but I appreciate you sharing that.
Oh, sure.
Like you're meeting people who are on TV all the time. They're on billboards. Do you ever get starstruck at all? Like if you see like Idris Elba or like, Denzel Washington or, whoever.
Well, Denzel actually.
George Clooney,
Denzel directed one of our episodes. George Clooney has been at a couple of like award shows and that sort of thing. I mean, yeah, at award shows. I mean, not so much my cast because I see them every day. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's really exciting when you see people who have accomplished a lot in their fields. I mean, I kind of feel the same way about talking to the experts, the doc experts that we talk to. But yeah, like people who have excelled in their fields, it's very exciting. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I asked this question to all the docs who've been on the show. So it's a sentence. It's yes. I'm not just a doc. People answer it so many different ways. So I'm really, really intrigued. I know the audience wants to know how Dr. Zoanne Clack is going to answer. I'm not just a doc. I'm a
creative mind.
Love that. Nobody else has done that.
Woohoo.
There you go. Nobody else has done that. So this has been a phenomenal interview. I think the audience is going to learn a ton from this. And that's a wrap. Episode 60 is officially over. Hope you all learned a lot from this episode. I took a chance going out to go and visit her. I knew she had a busy schedule, but she was able to fit me in. So I really appreciate Dr. Clack for this episode. Once again, if you want to check out pictures of the tour, they are in the show notes. If you really enjoyed this episode, go ahead and share it with someone who you think would benefit from this. And please subscribe to the show and leave a 5-star review if you really enjoy it. So I'll catch you all on the next episode. But remember one thing, we only got one life. Let's make it count and live outside the box. Peace.